Hey everyone, welcome. This is going to be the first video in a series of videos showing off Clara.io, an online 3D modeling and animating and rendering app. My students are going to be using this since we are all separated. So let's get started. There is a free version of Clara and there's also a paid version. We will be using the free version. So first thing you need to do is create a username. For my students, make sure you do not use your first or last names. It is public, so make sure that it's all school appropriate. For your email, I would use a personal email account, not your school email. And then make sure you choose a password that you're going to remember. And then you're going to click on Start Creating. Now the next screen that you will get to will be one where it asks you about licenses. You will want to choose the free license. We want the free option. So once you get logged in, you'll come to a screen like this that'll say Your Documents. And this is kind of your home page where you see all the projects that you have. You can also get some help up here at the top, and this is incredibly helpful. You can ignore this last column over here for developers. But over here for getting started, you can either create a new and empty scene. You can actually create a new scene and load another object in there. You can upload a model, a 3D object that you've created in another program or somebody's given you. You also have the same buttons over here. I'm not quite sure why they have it in both places, but there they are. You have some nice video tutorials, and then you have a user guide, a manual. All of your projects will show up down here, and this is where you can manage your projects. You can just click on it to open it up. You can delete one, so if I want to delete this red robot here, I can just click on it, and then over here on the left, I can just click on delete, and it is gone. All right, so I'm going to click on create a new scene, and if you give it a moment, it should load up with a whole bunch of, here we go, whole bunch of objects that you can load in. So, and these are free and legal and to use. So for instance, I can click on this Mario sculpture and you'll see it loads up here with the name Mario sculpture. And I can click on create and Mario should load up here. Now, depending on your device, some of these objects are very, very, very big and very complex. And so if you're on a Chromebook, this might take a while to load. Okay, so there's Mario there, so that's very cool. And so you are able to work on these projects. So how do I get back to that document screen? So the way you do it is you come up here, and in the top right-hand corner, you'll see your login, and you can just click on this right here, and you can click to go back home to your scenes. And when you do that, you open it up here. Now, what it does is it actually keeps this open. So I would recommend closing any tabs you're not going to need. And I'm going to go ahead and delete Mario since I don't really need him. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to click on Create New Scene. And this time I'll click on this button here. And I'm going to create an empty scene. And I'll just call this Tour. And you can leave all the settings the same. You can leave it public. You can leave this to WebGL. You don't really need to worry about those. And there you go. Let's see. Let's go ahead and click on Create. And here you are in the default scene. So going across the top here, right up here next to the word Clara.io is the name of your project. So if you want to rename it, I'll go ahead and now call this First 3D. Something like that. And hit Save. And there you go, now the name is there. I have a file menu where I can create a new empty scene. I can open an existing scene. I can go here to edit and do undo, redo. So I've got all these different menus that we will get to through different tutorials. Over here on the left-hand side, you will see 4 tabs: General, Model, Layout, and Render. Again, in the early tutorials, we will be working with General and Model as we are getting started. So let's click back on General. And over here on the left-hand side, you'll see everything that's in your scene: objects, lights, cameras, all that kind of good stuff. Here in the middle, we have a quad view of 4 different angles. And you can see the grid here, and you can see the entire world. The grid is not a solid object, it's just a reference to your space. And each of these 4 views can have different views, and you can kind of see that right now. We'll get into that in a moment. Above the middle view, you'll see that we have some 3D object icons, and if I click on the box icon, you'll see that it places a brand new box or cube inside my 3D space, so that's pretty cool. Going across up here, we have lights, we have things called materials, we'll get into those later. And over here on the right-hand side, whatever you have selected in your scene, all of the settings will be over here on the right-hand side. So again, we'll get into that later on. Okay, so let's go about setting up these viewports here. So 4 viewports might seem like a lot to look at once. You can change that. Let me show you how to change the individual views. So inside each window, you're going to see 3 little buttons over here on the left. You can click on the little add, and that will let you see different options. You can click on this middle one, and this chooses what view you want to see. So for instance, I don't need 2 perspective views. So I'm going to change this top left one to a top view. Okay, so that's now looking down at the cube. This one over here, I'm going to keep that as a perspective. This one down here, it is a top view, it says, but I want to change it to a left view. Okay, so now it's a left view. And then of course over here, I like to keep that as my front view. So this is just what I personally prefer. And there we go. The third button, the one that says realistic, you can click on that, and that's how you view this window. So this is realistic. You're seeing the solid color, and if we had some lights in there, you might see some shading. I'm going to choose wireframe, and so now I can actually see through the object. This is pretty typical. You have one view, the perspective view, that is solid, and that's realistic, and then the others are wireframes so that you can actually see through the object and see how it's interacting with other objects and things like that. All right, we're going to kind of finish up with this tour video. You will notice that I have the 3 axes represented here. Red is always the x-axis, and so if I left mouse click and drag on the red x arrow there, I will slide it and either go in the positive x direction or the negative x. I can go up or down on the y-axis, so that's going vertically. So this is positive y, negative y, and of course z. And I can go in the positive z direction and the negative z, and that's going in and out with depth. The arrowheads are always pointing to the positive direction. So if you ever get turned around and upside down and stuff like that, the arrow always points. So this is positive x, positive z, and positive y. So that's really handy. Let's talk about the 3 ways of navigating in 3D. So the first one is zooming. And so I have a 3-button mouse with a scroll wheel, and I highly recommend if you can get yourself a 3-button mouse that you do, because 3D is so much easier when you have them. So to zoom in and zoom out, all I'm doing is scrolling my mouse wheel forwards to zoom in and backwards to zoom out. And so that's really helpful there. If I want to orbit, I hold down the mouse wheel and then I move my mouse left, right, up, or down, and you can orbit in full-on 3D, and you can really spin it around and see your world. Now, I'm not rotating the cube, and I'm not rotating a camera. I'm just rotating my view. Okay, and last but not least, we have panning. And panning is where a director would move the camera up, down, left, or right. And the way you do that is you hold down the control key, and you, oops, I need to turn off a certain feature there. You hold down the control key, and then you hold down the mouse wheel. So this is control, mouse wheel, and you can see I'm panning left and right, panning up and down. And so sometimes that's really helpful when you want to stay like super zoomed in on an object, but you want to pan so you can stay zoomed in, but really just kind of move around the scene. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to getting started with Clara IO and a little bit of basic 3D. In our next video, we'll go ahead and we'll start adding in other objects. So clicking up here and adding in, things like cones, Selecting an object is simply just left-clicking on it, and it gets placed into your scene. And then you can move it around using the X, Y, Z axes. Okay, I hope this helps you out getting started, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.